Good morning, everyone. My name is Beatrice, and welcome to Voices of ASEAN. Buy property. That's the most common investment advice out there. Buy property. But it is easier said than done. Purchasing property often comes with high interest payments and a long waiting time before that debt is cleared for you to call it your very own. I'm very excited to be joined today by Creedence Dengre from Canada, a man who is changing the game and making property ownership more accessible to the average person. Creedence is the founder and CEO of Shackfolio, an exciting startup with very unique platform that reduces the cost of housing loans and the time to repay them. Joining us live from Vancouver, Canada, to tell us more about how we can start our own property empire, here is Creedence Dengre.
Hello, very happy to be here. I'm very excited to tell you about everything you just mentioned, but at the same time, I got tears in my eyes still from the last thing we were just talking about before we started.
Which we will let our audience know eventually what we were talking about.
We'll
get there. I love your background, Creedence. It's so colorful. It's just like you. You're a very colorful person.
Yeah, I adjusted the camera so you don't see the white. We just get the colors now.
Who needs the white when we have so much color? And that is what I want to focus on for my first question, because I want our audience to know who is Creedence Dengre. Because, you're interesting. You're a qualified engineer, you're a technologist, and you're a web marketer. And you decided at some point to go from that and become an entrepreneur. It is a very brave step, huge step. And you became an entrepreneur, particularly in property technology. So let's hear that story, Creedence.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would just really focus on my background in engineering and then now being in finance and economics. Everything in the middle was sort of just exploration and discovering what opportunities they were before I really got settled in economics and finance. And as an engineer, you become an engineer because you want to be creative. You want to have an impact on the world. You want to be able to use your brain, be helpful towards other people, and find a way to really contribute and make your mark on society. You get out into the workforce, though, quite often. This was my experience anyway. And I found that, I was just another cog in the machine. I think this is a story many people can relate to, where you start working for someone else's dreams. You don't really have that creative freedom that you wanted to have. And you don't feel like you're making the impact you wanted to make. So eventually, that shakes you up.
What kind of engineering were you at? I mean, was it chemical, mechanical?
Mechatronics. So I studied mechatronics engineering. My actual work was quite diverse. I worked in marine engineering. I worked in aerospace engineering. I worked in, marine, aerospace, and electrical as well. And, in marine engineering back in Singapore, I actually was doing some afloat ship repairs to ships that were in Anchorage. My first job ever was in a shipyard building patrol boats for the Nigerian Army. Later on, I ended up working for a subcontractor for Boeing. This was in Canada, and a subcontractor for Boeing and Lockheed Martin, where I was working on the 787, 777, and F-35.
Wow. Incredible, diverse amount of work that you've done.
Yeah, but that's where I felt like I wasn't actually having any impact or doing anything useful. It's when I stepped out of that, and I actually found my calling when I got into economics. And you do study a little bit of economics when you're studying engineering. It's just part of the coursework. You want to understand where the products that you fit or you build fit into the market overall. So there is that basic education in economics. But at the same time, I was always very passionate about it as well. It was kind of a second passion to engineering. So I was very learned and self-studied, and I continued to pursue that when I decided I wanted to leave engineering and become an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, you really start paying a lot more attention to the financial system, to the monetary system.
To understand how it works.
Exactly. All the little nitty-gritty details. And that's when you start seeing and then you start seeing where the problems are too. So you understand how it works, and you understand what doesn't work so well. You understand why it doesn't work for many to serve the interests of certain people as well. So it works for some, not for others. And then you start seeing where there's the problems that can be solved. And that's where the engineering mind goes, oh, wow, look, I can contribute here. I can be creative. I can have an impact. I can do something positive.
You see the gap. You see the gap and how you can fill it and how you can make people benefit from it.
Exactly. You mentioned we're going to get into, I guess, Shackfolio a little bit shortly. Ultimately, my coming to that was I came across a method of a financial engineering process that had been sort of kept as tribal knowledge. It was very like almost a well-kept secret. It's not like it wasn't necessarily intentionally kept secret, but it took a certain financial acumen to understand it. It was deployed, utilized by some very specific high net worth individuals as well as institutions, but it was something that the average person never really understood. Even if they understood it, there were tools they had to have access to in order to do it. Not everyone has access to those tools. And then even if they do they have the discipline, the time, the energy to carry it out? So I saw that as a problem.
Why was it such a secret? Well, I mean, why was that very elitist and kept as a secret from the common man?
I think the origin of it wasn't even like an intentional loophole or anything. I think that the origin of this particular method was just, at the end of the day, you can try and create financial tools as a bank or in the banking system that work for your interest as a bank. But at the end of the day, there's certain principles that govern you, which are mathematics, and those mathematical principles. I got to be careful what I'm saying here, right? Okay. But let's not pretend that banks have not been very self-serving in the over history and over time. Okay. They like to create systems that work for them and not necessarily for their clients, even though they market as working for their clients.
Yeah.
But economics is still a game of mathematics. And if they haven't closed all those loops to make it all gains for themselves, there's room left in there to work for other people. And I guess this method, it was identified by people who just paid attention, studied it, and realized, hey, there's some stuff I can do here. I can work this out. I can actually, improve my own situation. And I feel like they probably kept it a secret, not so much intentionally, but it was kind of hard to scale in many regards, at least traditionally. Now we have technology, so it's much easier to scale it. But up until the last decade, it would have been quite difficult to scale it.
That makes sense.
And also, I think there's probably the concern that if they didn't check off all the boxes that were also in favor of the financial institutions and the regulators, would they end up, if this became too public, would they end up getting regulated to a point where it wouldn't work for them anymore?
I see.
And now that's actually something that we've done as well. What we've done also addresses the interests of the other parties and the existing stakeholders. So even though our system benefits the average person and those people who would be clients of the bank anyways, we've actually been able to structure it in such a way that it serves the interest of the lenders, serves the interest of other existing industry stakeholders. So we're not stepping on anyone's toes. And we were very careful to take that into consideration when building our product before launching, because we wanted to make sure that, we're not going to face resistance. We want the people who have a vested interest in the industry to feel we're value added to them, so we don't get ourselves into trouble.
So it's a win-win for all then. It's a win-win for all. And the general man, the man on the street, gets access to something that he may never have had access to before using your property technology. Am I getting it right? That's great. That's excellent. So Shackfolio claims to be able to help accelerate time to property ownership and reduce the cost of paying off mortgage by as much as 40%. Creedence, that is amazing. But even I want to know, how are you able to do that? How are you able to help people achieve such high savings?
Absolutely. So I will often keeping things short, just to give a person a high level summary of what we do, say that Shackfolio is able to save you up to 40% of the cost and 80% of the time paying off your mortgage. Now, exact percents on savings will differ for each individual, depending on their own financial situation, depending on interest rates, depending on the cost of the property. Those things are all going to ultimately affect what that term gets shortened to. But that's a very realistic average number for an average income individual, is a 40% cost savings and 80% time savings. And the way it works, as you and most people are very well aware, when you purchase a home on a mortgage and you finance that over a 25 or 30-year term, most of your cost is going to end up being paid in interest on top of your principal. Principal is one thing. A lot of interest. Exactly. Depending on, if you were to pay 5% interest over a 30-year term and pay through that entire 30-year term, you're going to end up paying double the cost of your property.
Yes. I've noticed that, and I'm like, oh my God, do people really realize how much more they're paying?
Exactly. And now 5% is not necessarily, representative of where, say, North American markets are right now. We're now pushing 2%, or in some places even lower than 2%. But there's other markets which are higher as well. India right now is about 7.5% interest rate. Parts of Latin America are 11%. So there's an impact to be had everywhere. And even if we're looking at a market where there's a lower interest rate, if you're shortening the time, you're still shortening the total interest paid.
Yeah.
Right. And ultimately, the way this works, the way Shackfolio works, is we create liquidity first of all.
Okay.
We accelerate payments, and by accelerating,
how do you create that liquidity? You said
that's sort of the secret sauce in there that you're getting into.
Okay. All right.
But we ultimately, there are tools available that are already in the market that can be used to create liquidity, and also be a source of capital as well.
Okay.
Those tools, if you combine them, with your mortgage, can become quite powerful if you know how to use them properly. Anyway, what was I saying? I was going to say,
how do you do it?
We create liquidity, we accelerate your payments. And of course, if we're accelerating your payments, we're paying off your property faster. And and by paying off your property faster, that's less time over the long run paying interest. So you're saving money on interest because you're saving time paying it off. This sounds like a very basic thing to do. But for most people, there's liquidity is a big concern. People will think, okay, well, I can make extra payments on my property. But if you do, and most people are reluctant to, most average people, because if you're putting your, whatever you've got left at the end of every month into your property, you're becoming illiquid, right? So now you're running the risk of default every single month. So as long as all's fine and dandy, nothing to worry about. But the second you run into a pinch, then you could get foreclosed on and lose everything. So there's that financial anxiety that is a big inhibition for the average person.
A lot of homeowners.
And then the other thing is, where does the capital come from, right? You have to be able to come up with capital to accelerate the payments, and then you also have to be able to keep the person liquid at the same time. These are very big concerns. Anyway, Shackfolio doesn't just save the home buyer money on their property. We actually are a fully integrated portfolio management tool. So as a first-time home buyer, or even if you're refinancing your principal residence, this is a great tool just to save you money and time to full title ownership. However, we also go a step further, and we plug it into the market through MLS systems, and then allow you to have access to additional properties that are on the market, find properties that would be ideal rental properties for you, identify them, execute on that, purchase them, add them to your portfolio. And then the same leveraging process that's performed on the first property gets repeated on the additional properties. So you can then also accelerate the payment for your investment properties as well. And then you can compound your assets under management, where Shackfolio essentially is allowing you to build your own REIT on autopilot, compounding your equity and compounding your income streams.
But that's interesting. So you're acting like a one-stop center for anyone who wants to buy a property for the first time and leverage on it and buy more properties.
Exactly. And then you get to manage everything in one location. All your accounting's automated, all your cash flows integrated. You get to directly communicate with all your tenants through the platform. You have the ability to, deal with building maintenance, other property management services. Does your tenant need a plumber? Okay, you can book the plumber through Shackfolio.
So that means you have a consultant for each person. So let's say I want to come on board Shackfolio. So, and assuming I'm in Canada right now. So what do I do? Do I go to the bank first? Do I go to Shackfolio first? Where are you positioned between the buyer and the lender?
So to address your question directly, we're an intermediary between the buyer and the lender. You can come directly to Shackfolio and apply for the property or apply for your mortgage through Shackfolio and get your approval through Shackfolio, where in the back end we're sending that to our partnered lenders to process your credit application and deal with the underwriting. And then if you're approved, you get notified through Shackfolio, and then all the contracts get executed electronically, properties added into your portfolio, and then you're on your merry way.
Wow. Sounds like a dream, seriously, because buying a property is scary for a lot of people, especially when it's the first time. There's so much paperwork, so the paperwork and all that still does Shackfolio come in between the bank and the buyer?
Yeah, so all the paperwork is tendered electronically through our platform.
Okay.
At the same time, you could go to a partnered lender into the branch where they're able to then say, hey, look, you're looking to apply for a mortgage through us. We're partnered with Shackfolio. They've got this awesome product. It's going to save you a ton of money. It's going to give you all these extra tools for investment where you can, not only, alleviate your debt burden, but also faster accumulate wealth. And offer that as a product to their clients too, so we can get those in-branch referrals from our partners.
I see. Okay, yeah. So, and how do you monetize it? How does Shackfolio make money from it? Do we take it from the buyer, the lender?
It's a interest sharing with the lender. It's like a portion of the total interest. Even though we save money for the buyer in terms of their long-term interest, but it's not like there's no interest, right? They're still paying their set interest rate through their term. They're just paying it for a shorter period of time.
So there's nothing really. So the buyer doesn't have to pay Shackfolio a consultation fee. There's no such.
It's not an additional charge.
Oh, that sounds great. That sounds really great.
I mean, I'll be honest, we have considered additional fees for ancillary services in the future that we might offer, but we're not at that point yet where we've fully
fair
decided what those might be and how we might generate that additional revenue. But this is our primary revenue stream.
I see. So does it only work so that means you have to be like a property expert in Canada maybe? Or does it work anywhere else? Because right now, let's say I want to be a part of Shackfolio, but does it mean I can only buy property in Canada, or does it apply to me buying property in Southeast Asia, for example?
So our model works anywhere in the world that you can finance a property on a mortgage. The limitation is we have to be partnered with the lenders that we work with. So we do intend to take this global and quite quickly. Now, if we were to go into the Malaysian market, we would first have to partner with a lender that is in Malaysia. Now, that could be, specifically a Malaysian bank like Maybank, for example, or, it could just be another financial institution that's maybe a global financial institution that happens to be licensed in Malaysia as well, like HSBC or something.
So when do you plan to do that, to go outside Canada? Do you have like a timeline that you want to work this in, have a prototype in Canada and then roll it out to the rest of the world?
Yeah, so North America is where we're going to be doing our pilot, initially in Canada, but at some American cities as well. We're looking at doing that over the next year. We're going to market Q1 is our target, inshallah.
North America.
That's what we're aiming for.
Okay.
And probably within a year and a half, start going into additional markets. Some of the markets we're looking at immediately would be the Indian market and also the Latin American markets. But yeah, Southeast Asia in general, the whole world.
Is there a reason why you're choosing the Indian market and Latin America as your second choices?
Indian market is because, you know, we've made some inroads there with potential partners that are very strong. So that's a big driver for that in particular, but also it's just a huge market.
Yeah, it
is. You know, it's a huge market.
And as you said, the interest is rather high, 7%, right?
Yeah, so there's a bigger impact to be had there as well.
Exactly.
It makes it more marketable.
Exactly. So there's a bigger chance of people saying, hey, I can make 2% less from the 7% that I'm making. And when you come to Southeast Asia, I'm from what we spoke about earlier, I think this is a familiar market for you. Tell us about, you grew up in Singapore. You lived in Malaysia for how many years? Can you tell us a little bit about your
well, I grew up in Singapore. I absolutely consider myself Southeast Asian, you know, because I lived out there until I was 19 years old. I actually didn't live in Malaysia though. I spent lots of time in Malaysia. But I was always based in Singapore. I also traveled a lot through the region. You know, I spent lots of time in Indonesia, in Thailand, in India, in Hong Kong, other places as well. But yeah, Singapore was always home base. What was the rest of the question here? I got.
No, I said that you tell us a little bit about your origins here, because when I spoke to you before we started this, you have amazing ability to adapt to all the languages. You're speaking in English, you're speaking in Malay and Chinese, and though you're swearing more.
Okay. This is where you get me to swear. This is that part of the conversation where in the beginning I said I had tears in my eyes still from what we were just talking about. Now you're gonna bring it out.
Yes, absolutely. This is the fun part of the entire session. So,
oh my God.
So
okay.
Let's see. For our audience.
Malay. Babi gila mampus muka tai. Tete besar, konek kecil, goyang-goyang. Of course, the important stuff, misoto. Yeah, you know,
I don't think anyone.
A bit more. Then
nobody has heard Angmo talk like that before. So this is
Angmo, Matsale, whatever you want to call me.
Yeah, right. and tell us about the food, because. Oh, Creedence. Okay, this is the funniest ever.
Okay, Hokkien. Of course, you know, you heard everyone, the standard stuff. You've heard everyone saying Hokkien. Kani nabe chao chi bai hong kanani. And then, you know, Tamil, all right?
Yes, Tamil.
Huh?
What did you say? What did you say in Tamil?
Oh, no, I didn't say it yet.
Oh, okay.
I was in it, then you said something, so I stopped. Nala mordatichi sutalitanichiko.
Oh my God. I'm so glad so many people don't understand Tamil. Hopefully we don't have people who understand Tamil here. But it's amazing that you have all these skills that you've picked up from your travels in Southeast Asia. And
well, I mean, you know, you're growing up when you grow up in a country that all these languages are spoken.
Yes. And the first thing you learn is how to swear in that language.
Of course.
And the food. And Creedence, I think what's incredible is the way you actually know more about our cuisine, Malaysian cuisine, and you actually make it in Canada for your friends. Could you tell us a little bit about that? I promise you I'll go back to Shackfolio, but this is exciting.
What your audience doesn't know is that I actually sent you a picture the other night, an MMS, where I made pisang goreng.
Yep, exactly.
If for everyone in your audience that's not Malaysian, pisang goreng is, you know, fried banana.
Yeah.
Other than that, you know, a couple of weeks ago, I made a huge batch of mee siam. It was in my fridge for probably a whole week. And I was just bringing that for lunch every single day.
Wow.
I became vegetarian 7 years ago, so I have had to improvise. It actually makes it. We do have some like Singapore and Malaysian restaurants in Vancouver, but it's much harder for me to go to them now because I don't have as many options. So I've actually had to improvise and find my own ways of making the exact same thing, like replicate the same flavors in a vegetarian way. and then and it works perfectly fine. I mean, I can make just about anything you can think of, whether it's bihun or laksa.
Tell me, what can you make? We want to hear. We are foodies here, you know. We get very excited.
You know, bihun, laksa. I made miribus one time. I can't really remember how I did that, but I was just like going through my imagination of like, how can I make this flavor? And I pulled it off. So I was happy with the result. Yeah.
Nasi lemak?
Yeah, nasi lemak is a bit difficult. I mean, I can of course have rice, but and peanuts, but then ikan bilis, vegetarian, can't do ikan bilis.
Not bad.
Even, you know, sambal is a bit difficult because of the belacan, but I will.
Belacan. Okay, he knows the word belacan. Hallelujah. Okay, so I'll come back to Shackfolio, but I think that was the funnest part. I'm not sure how my audience would react to that, but anyway, you say Shackfolio would be of interest to followers of the Austrian School of Economics. Now, can you explain how the Austrian School of Economics differs from mainstream economic theories such as neoclassicism and Keynesian? What's the difference and why you go for that one?
Absolutely. Well, I say it like this. You know, economics can be a science or it can be an art.
Mm-hmm.
It is a science to those who appreciate the laws of mathematics, you know, for what they are, and the framework of how money itself works, and how it can exchange hands and be distributed through an exchange of goods and services in a productive economy, and how it will always be redistributed when something is, you know, when there is that exchange. And that really falls into the Austrian School of Economics. It's just it's the science, it's the math of how that works, right? And then there's the Keynesian school, which should really be called the Fabian school, because Keynes came out of the Fabian Society, as did many of the other proponents of Keynesian economics, or modern monetary theory, as they are starting to call it now. And to them, economics is an art, because they get to tweak this little thing and that little thing, and then all of a sudden, you know, they get all the wealth and everyone else gets poorer, and they create this huge divide to elevate themselves more and more and more, and you go lower, lower, lower. And this is something most people don't understand, you know.
I didn't know that until you told me this. I thought Keynesian was the economics that everyone should follow.
Oh, I'm sure you knew this. Come on.
So it's like a drama. It's like theater. You can actually put whatever story you want in it to make it adapt to yourself. That's what Keynesian is. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of theater when you look at the Federal Reserve and other central banks, and how they play into politics, and the European Central Bank, what the IMF does, all the rest of them. It's a big theater, and the audience is captivated. They forget that there's a whole world outside of the theater, and that it's quite interesting, actually. Let me just Absolutely. You know, Austrian economics is really classical economics. Austrian economics is very simply, I have something that I could give you. I want something else from you. Can we make can we have an exchange here? If we can't necessarily agree on the value, then we need to have some kind of unit of measurement. So we come up with coinage. Now,
that's the only form of economics, isn't it, Creedence? That's free market, am I right?
Well, yeah, free market is Austrian, right? And the way it works is there's a finite supply of money. So if you've got one person who happens to be wealthy and they want a new pair of shoes, they have to pay a cobbler for that pair of shoes. Then the cobbler's wealth increases while that wealthier person's wealth decreases. And it just encourages that continued exchange of goods and services, so there can always be ongoing productivity, and people will have that value to exchange and participate in an economic system. And it's quite fair, you know. It's absolutely fair, because everybody is rewarded more or less equally, because it's fungible, for the efforts that they put in, or proportionately to the efforts they put in.
Mm.
And the
Agree.
perceived value of different things can more or less be agreed upon by everyone in the market.
Yeah.
Now, the problem comes when you come up with this elastic theory of money,
Yeah.
where you think that you can just keep printing it, and printing money is one thing.
Yes, finally someone says it. Oh, thank you, Creedence. Yeah.
Printing money is one thing, right?
Yeah.
If there are people who say, well, a degree of inflation can be good because it stimulates growth. The only reason it really stimulates growth is because people, when you print money, you're reducing the value of it, and that means that people need to keep working more to get more money in order to actually save. Like, they don't get savings, right? As long as there's inflation, your savings are going down in what they can purchase you.
Yeah.
So it's like this perpetual race to always just maintain your standard of living. And
exactly. And it's suffocating. So it's just becoming a tightening of a noose. That's the way I look at it.
That's just part of the problem, though, right?
Yeah.
Because you could have a government, for example, that could print money, and it wouldn't be so bad. Because if you had a government printing money, then that you wouldn't need tax, right? The government could say, this is by decree, this is legal tender.
Yep.
We'll print this set amount of it every single year.
Yeah.
It will enter circulation through government contracts or through the banking system.
Yes.
And make what you will with it.
Yeah.
The problem that we really have is that that's not the main problem. There's two problems here, but the bigger problem is the fact that governments don't print money anywhere in the world. Pretty much all money is printed by private banks, central banks, right?
Central banks, okay.
And it's really funny. People have this idea that their taxes pay for their government services. They think that their taxes pay for education. They think their taxes pay for roads. They think their taxes pay for bridges and healthcare. No, none of those things are paid for by your taxes. 100% of all government spending is debt spending. They borrow money from the central bank and they stick you with the bill. So
where does our taxes go?
Well, this is the thing, right? You've got inflation, which people call an invisible tax, because the printing of money devalues your dollar. But then you've got the real tax, which is the government servicing their interest. They borrowed all this money.
So the government is borrowing money from the
charging
central
them
bank.
interest, so they stick you with the interest payments.
Oh,
that's it,
so
right?
our taxes is going to pay off the loan that the government is paying the central banks.
Only covering the interest. They don't even plan to ever pay the principal back. That's why everyone's always, there's always a government deficit, never a surplus.
Oh my God, it all makes sense. And how is this system even going to be able to be sustained? Where is it going?
Well, they believe, that it's self-sustainable, because by perpetually making it more and more difficult, people have to work harder and harder. So they keep their heads down, they pay less attention, they get busy, and they do more in terms of physical output and giving their own energy, their own life source, their prana, giving it away to be it the government or the banks. And it's really slavery, right? That's all it is.
It is.
People think that slavery was abolished at some point. It was never abolished. It was just institutionalized and the name was changed.
Yeah. You're so right. At the back of your mind, I always thought something is so wrong with this whole system. But I thought it's just me not being smart enough to understand how economics work. But you, my dear Creedence, have explained it more than any economic textbooks and professors.
I'm going to call you out on one thing, which is you're trying to play a little dumb here, like I'm enlightening you, but I'm quite sure you're very well aware of what we're discussing.
I suspected all along, but yeah, you just put it very eloquently and clearly, that's all. But coming back to the property thing, yeah, thank you for that. Really, honestly, Creedence, it just opened up, wow. And that was very smartly and eloquently explained. Thank you. I'm going to do a little bit more of my own reading now. But coming back to Shackfolio and property, this is coincidence, but I always thought Canada is the most beautiful country. And I had a retirement plan of buying a lake house in Vancouver. Even found a few of these houses and I kept them there, this is where I'm going to be. But however, of late, and I'm not sure if this is connected with global situation, pandemic, but I'm reading about military going, and I'm sorry I'm using this platform to ask you this, but I've been reading about military going into people's homes, prison camps being built for the non-vaccinated. Is that really true? Or is this just, things that I'm reading? Because you're in Canada and I thought, I'll just slip that question right in there.
I am aware of the reports that you're aware of. And all I can say to that is, I defer to Doug Casey, where are you familiar with Doug Casey?
No, what's that? Sorry?
No, Doug Casey.
Doug Casey, no.
Okay. Calls himself international man. He's got a whole blog. He's an economist as well. Okay. And maybe might be worth having him on your channel at some point. Okay. But I defer to one thing he often says, which is one of the most important diversifications you can make in terms of investment is in residency. And I think that having yourself tied to one particular country or jurisdiction is irresponsible, because things can happen at any time. And it's very important to have other places that you can go just in case. Yeah. Also, history has lessons it can teach us if we pay attention to them. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who look back at history and they can see the exact same thing that happened in history happening in more contemporary terms in the here and now, and not see the connection. They yes. can somehow have this cognitive dissonance where the exact same behavior repeated to them, it's like, no, that's not happening.
That's not going to happen now.
Never happened here. I know. They'll be in denial until it's too
the
late.
wall is right there.
Yeah. I'm not saying run to everybody. I think that it's important for people who are able to identify problems to be able to take action and solve those problems and stand up for their rights for their fellow humans. Yeah. But at the same time, when you look at every war in history, the civilian casualties who died are ultimately the people who saw the writing on the wall and didn't pay any attention to it. They're the ones who stayed there. They could have seen, oh, well, this is obviously happening. I've seen the pattern before. Maybe I should, start packing and go somewhere. But they were like, no, it's not going to get that bad. It's okay. That'll never happen. Well, next thing you know, look at Syria, right? Yeah. And what Syria is a whole other conversation. It's again one of those things that's not what it seems, right? It's funny, we talk about the Austrian and Keynesian school of economics, and ultimately the Austrian school is capitalism. The Keynesian school is socialism. People like to blame capitalism for a lot of the problems we have today, but it's a complete misnomer. It's a misunderstanding of what's going on, and it's not accidental. People have been taught to think that we are in a capitalist society, and we are not. We have not lived. But just about every country in the world is a socialist country right now. We have not really had capitalism anywhere in the world for almost a century. And I mentioned Syria, which is what's bringing us into this. Around the same time as everything happened, Syria, what happened in Syria recently came out of, the Arab Spring. And at that same time, the other, country that was significantly affected was Libya. Yeah. And people are told these stories in the media that, oh, Gaddafi was a dictator. Oh, he was a bad person. Oh, all these horrible things. If you speak to people in Africa, they all loved him. Exactly. He was a hero to not only the Libyan, but all African people. Yeah. And
he was a strong man.
He was strong.
And people had great lives there in Libya under him. I just think he was removed because he was strong and he had his own thoughts.
Well, this is the thing, right? He actually wanted to make a capitalist society in Africa. He wanted to have a Pan-African system that would be capitalist. Enough said, right?
Yeah, and then all we hear about Libya is Gaddafi was terrible, but I think there's sometimes more to what we hear. Yeah. And okay, we are moving from let's move from the grim possibilities to a bright future. Now,
Absolutely.
I always believe that entrepreneurs like you, Credence, you are the salt of the earth. You are People like you are the true wealth creators of a free market that makes for a healthy world. Now, entrepreneurs are the products of free market capitalism. And as you just said, over the last 100 years, there's been no real capitalism per se. And it's been painted out to look like a big bad wolf. And I like to actually point out, and maybe I'm wrong, but I would like you to correct me, that it's actually crony capitalism that people are mistaking it for as why capitalism is negative. Do you agree with that?
Sort of, but I don't agree with the term crony capitalism. If you call it crony capitalism, it's socialism. It's capitalism is not crony. It can't be. It's in its true sense. That's unadulterated. It's a perfect system. But once you adulterate it, crony, you create socialism. And I know you wanted to talk actually more on a positive note. I'll just finish this one particular part though.
Sure.
I didn't really say it. Is the problem is that people are they've been put into a socialist system that they've been taught is capitalism. They are then shown all the problems in the society that have been created by this socialist system masquerading as a capitalist system. They're taught to blame capitalism for those problems, and they're told that socialism is the solution. So here's the problem that we've created for you, and the solution is to embrace more of the thing causing the problem.
Yeah.
Right now that's we'll move on from that.
But
yeah,
that's what
in terms of being an entrepreneur,
that's exactly what's being taught in schools, right? Even my kids, they're like, "Mom, socialism is the way to go. Capitalism is terrible." And I'm like, wait, why is capitalism bad? And they're like, capitalism is, it robs people. I said, no, but they're taught that. And you just say
capitalism is empowerment. It is the ability for everybody to succeed. And it's not just the ability, it ensures people succeed at all levels. It is equality. What socialism is, because as soon as you introduce that central bank, as soon as you start printing that money, as soon as you start having interest owed back to that central bank, and you have to tax people to take it, you start putting down the lowest and you start elevating the richest. The people, the people who are the richest get richer, and the people who are the poorest get poorer. And one thing that socialism is great at doing is making the less fortunate in that equation really angry, and loathe the people that are further ahead from them. Now the problem is they don't actually loathe the people at the very top, because they think the people at the very top are their heroes, but they loathe the people in the middle. And their idea of equality, what the average socialist thinks is equality, is let's make everybody
equally poor,
who is not elite, equally as poor, and suffer equally under this almighty dictatorship of overlords. It's quite bizarre, socialism all it does is concentrates the wealth in even fewer hands, and makes it that much less accessible to everyone. So you gotta inform people, but sometimes people also, it's hard. But yeah, back to positive. In terms of entrepreneurship, I think that I think something we talked about previously is coming to me now, so I just want to say it. Sometimes people have said to me before, well, not everybody can be a leader, not everyone can be an entrepreneur, not everyone can be a business person, or has an idea, or has something to, a lot of people need to rely on someone else. And I completely disagree with that. I think everybody has something to offer. Everybody can be a leader. Everybody can be an entrepreneur. It's just about whether they really know themselves. Have they found their true self? Have they found their true calling? And once you do, it doesn't need to be something that exists today. You don't need to be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer or any of these established things. At some point, somebody saw a field of flowers and thought, oh, I could cut this and sell it and
Yeah.
I'll make money. So you could carve sculptures. There's so many different things you can do. Even when I say carving sculptures, I'm taking something that I know that exists.
Yeah.
You could have an idea that seems totally out of the realm of anything we know to exist today, and that's the best kind of idea you can have because it's new. So you're already ahead of the game. And I think that when people find that, whatever it might be inside of them, and they get rid of the inhibitions that hold them back, and they fully embrace that, they can run with it. You'll become successful. And if you can appreciate what that thing is, you can bet you're going to find someone else who's going to appreciate it too. So there's going to be a market, even if you have to create that market and be the one who creates it.
I totally agree with you.
Once you
the words out of my mouth, you're totally agreeing with you. And I think it's fear. A lot of people are just drugged into a state that they don't believe in themselves, that they can do it. And you are absolutely right. And that's why a free market, where everyone tries at least to be able to contribute to someone else. And it's like, I want this, you want this, we find a way about it. It works. It will work.
Fear is the most debilitating thing. Fear is how people control, right? And it's horrible. Fear, and you really shouldn't have it. Why? Every single thing that holds us back, that restricts us in society, is sold to us as it's for your safety. And when you're told something is for your safety, obviously what it's doing is it's masquerading as something that can alleviate your fears. It's trying to offer a solution to the things you fear. But if you're worried about being safe, and what on earth are you alive for?
Yeah, exactly.
You got to go out and live your life. And I'm sorry to say this, but if you're afraid, you ain't gonna live.
Yeah, there's no point living if you're living in total fear. You're not living, you're existing.
Exactly. I didn't come here to exist. I came here to live, and I encourage everyone else to do the same.
Absolutely. Creedence, you have inspired me so much that I would buy anything from Shackfolio. Seriously, this is the kind of person I want leading any entity that I want to invest in. So I really look forward to Shackfolio coming into Southeast Asia. And I hope when you do, I'm already saying I'm here. I'm going to help buy properties through you. And I'm looking forward to when you can come over.
Okay? Wonderful. I got a customer.
We can makan together when you come over here.
Absolutely. I'll cook.
Is there anything else?
That way I know what's in it.
I didn't hear you. What did you just say?
I said I'll cook.
Yay! What will you
that
cook?
way I know what's in it, so I'm not going to have to worry if it's vegetarian or not.
And what would you cook? Can you give me a typical meal that you cook for me when you come down here?
Typical meal? I mean,
typical Malaysian meal?
Anything. I think I named a bunch of the things earlier in terms of what I could cook. Char kway teow, maybe, but of course, without the bakwa, because that wouldn't work for me. So I can make my own version of it. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm waiting to have you here. And so thank you so much. This has been such an interesting interview. And I'm really wishing you all the best successes for Shackfolio, for you, for your future. I think you are such a dynamic, intelligent, and forward-thinking entrepreneur, and a generally great person altogether. So next week, ladies and gentlemen, we talk to Rob Chatfield, the president and CEO of Free to Choose Network, a US-based media organization that advocates the principles of Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman. So it's very similar to what we talked to with Creedence today. And Rob will be talking about the problems with crony capitalism, how it has perverted the meaning of capitalism, and why true capitalism is the best system for individuals to thrive. And you got a precursor to what the topic is today in our conversation with Creedence. So join us at 11 a.m. Malaysian time on Friday, 22nd October, only on Voices of ASEAN. And feel free to ask questions during the show. Voices of ASEAN thanks you for your time, and we'll be uploading a recorded version of this dialogue with Creedence in our portal for those who missed it. Thank you so much, everyone, and see you next week.